next. My name is Mike Rasmussen. I'm back with you again with another great guest, this time for our HR Thought Leadership Series, episode number 2. And today I have David Alsop, who is from the Silicon Slopes and one of our HR leaders at Ultradent. So I wanted to bring him on my show and give him a chance to talk about his journey and yeah, take it away. Tell us about yourself, David, and where have you been? What's your career been like, and what are some of the things that you want to share about yourself initially?
Okay, well, thanks for having me on, Mike. It's good to be here. Yeah, my career journey, I think it starts with just the fact that I hate talking about myself, and so I'm pretty insecure as a human being by nature. Growing up, I grew up in an environment that had a lot of mental health dynamics that caused me to really question a lot of things in my life. So if you think about my journey where I'm at right now, I'm this chief HR officer at Ultradent Products. It's a company that I've been at for 6 years. It's been around for 45 years. Just a wonderful product company that makes products for dentists. A lot of our products are probably in your mouth and everyone's mouth that's listening, and they don't know it because it's very much what supplies the dentistry industry for the tools, the resources, the components that go into dentistry. So, but my journey is really a wandering one, is what I call it, because I don't have a background originally in human resources.
Wow.
I
Okay.
got a degree in marriage, family, human development, thinking I would be a therapist about
Okay.
24, 25 years ago. And when I got to my senior year, I just realized, oh, I guess I don't like this. And I still just wanted to graduate and get a job. So I graduated and eventually ended up at Kraft Foods as a sales representative for them.
Wow.
But that always stuck with me, a social science background that I had, that I just had to find a job. I had to follow the economy after I graduated because I didn't have a degree that was attractive to a lot of places. And so sales was the avenue for me to get into a great company. And then I surprised my boss in sales when he was ready to, promote me to other parts of our business for an opportunity to grow. And I asked him, how do I get into HR? And he thought I was crazy. And I didn't realize why he thought I was crazy at the time, but he helped me get introduced to some HR people. And eventually, I didn't have the background for it, but I ended up getting a job where no one else wanted the job in Denver, Colorado, with a company that we had purchased as Kraft Foods at the time called Nabisco.
Hmm.
And they needed someone to come over and help them train their workforce and staff their workforce with people that could understand both Kraft and Nabisco through the merger process. And really, I'm very naive in a lot of things. I didn't know what HR was. I didn't know that merged companies, you usually have a company that hates the other one because they got taken over. And that was the case
Hmm.
for me. I went over to Nabisco, and people really resented me because I came
Wow.
from that takeover company. But I took the job. I wanted the job, and I learned along the way that I had to build trust with people that were different from me, that had different understandings of where I came from. Um, and that was a training and staffing job that just got me into HR. And then I did some things that helped unify the organizational training aspects at that time, that helped me take a job in Chicago at the headquarters of the organization to help to grow those training strategies in the company. And so, a long journey later, I ended up getting offered a job in human resources. Again, a job that no one really wanted, but that kid that, wants to get into HR, maybe we give him a shot. And my first job in HR taught me that I realized why everyone hated it. That we were doing trainings and counting the numbers of trainings, but not realizing everyone hated the trainings. It was about policies and making sure we manage the workforce, control the workforce in a sense, and then a lot of investigating to understand why employee A is, complaining that manager B is, wanting to fire them, and, let's do it the right way and let's not get sued. Just a lot of things that were very administrative or problem firefighting dynamics in HR that I didn't really enjoy, and it wasn't what I dreamed of in a job. Um, but it really started to click for me in human resources at that company when I just went to the presidents that I work for and supported and just said, hey, you have a strategy. You want to deliver high results for your business with the numbers, the financials, everything that you're working towards. I'm the people person. How do I help you get the people moving in the same direction as you with their hearts and their minds and their motivation to be able to succeed and have you succeed at the same time with the results you're driving? And I was surprised how many leaders, when I asked them that through my career from there forward, were kind of surprised. They weren't used to HR people asking them that, because typically what HR did is we took the marching orders from the human resource function to implement in the business function.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, I just learned, here's what the marching orders are, here's what we're supposed to do, but what do you need most? And then let's figure out what the right strategy is forward. And it helped me build trust with leaders that I wasn't necessarily early on in my career trusted by the HR team, but I was trusted by the leaders.
Mm-hmm.
And that started to really form my mentality on how I build business strategies through the human function. And 14 years later, I was at Oscar Mayer in Madison, Wisconsin, as the HR director. And we went through one of those mergers that happens every 3 years in a company like that, where we were the ones that were acquired as a company by Kraft, by Heinz, that was purchased by a Brazilian company by called 3G. And they came in right away and said, we're going to shut down the location in Madison. We're going to move everything to Chicago for the headquarters office. And if you want to join us in Chicago, you can do that. And that was a time in my life where I'd lived in Chicago. My wife and I, had a growing family, and we just realized it wasn't the time for us to move to Chicago. And
Wow.
so we decided to say, no, we're not moving to Chicago, along with 75% of the Oscar Mayer headquarter office. And at that point, they said, well, if you want this package to leave, the severance, you need to relocate this business down to Chicago without it taking a blip in business results. And so that was my year, my last year at that company, just relocating all the business down, staffing the organization up with our recruiting teams, and then figuring out what the heck I wanted to do with my next step. And ironically, we decided we wanted to be in the mountains, and that was either Denver, where we lived, or Utah, where we grew up. And Utah had a great economy. I thought, let's go for the economy. That's where we live. The mountains are right there. We can just drive up into the mountains. We don't have to take 2 hours to go into the mountains, into the Rockies, like where we lived in Denver. And so we made the move. We sold our house. We moved into the basement of my in-laws in Orem, Utah, and no job, didn't know a person,
Wow.
and just thought the economy's good. I should just land a job because I have a great resume. I was with a great company, and that was the first realization of networks that matter, and tight networks that want to know people that know people that know people to hire people.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't that person, and so you know, I was in a depression stage of my life trying to figure out, how do I get to be known? How do I connect with people? And oh, by the way, I'm an introvert, and so everyone was wanting someone more energetic than me, even to break
Wow.
through that network. And that's where I started Disrupt HR Salt Lake City. It's a chapter of a global entity that was growing at the time, just to do a conference, get some people together and talk about new ideas, or just trigger some new ideas in the audience. And so that connected me with different people in the marketplace that really had energy for changing HR. And
Mm-hmm.
so I just asked around, and it started with Elisa Garn. She became a
Yes.
partner, where I just asked
It's
her, hey,
fantastic.
Elisa, do you think this would be good in the market? Because I'm going to buy it and bring it here. If it's good, and if you think it would help the market, because I can't do it. I don't know anybody if I don't have someone that knows somebody. And she was a great recruiting partner for me coming into the market, and said, we need it. And she joined me just to get it started, connected with a bunch of people. And I realized very quickly there was an underground of passionate people wanting to do something different in HR, where HR was really behind. and trying to change, but struggling in a startup market where CEOs, you know, startup market, the first time they think about HR is when they need to fire someone, create some
when they're
policies to
ready to
control someone.
scale. Yep.
Yep, when they're ready to scale, I need to do this with, policies, benefits, and I need to fire people legally and not get in trouble for it. And they're not really thinking about modern HR that I had to think about in my previous life. And so that was what Disrupt became. Is I thought it was going to be 100 people getting together to talk about changing HR, and then 350 people showed up our first event and just really
Blew
had an
you away how
underground
many came,
desire.
huh? Yeah.
Yeah, it blew me away. And so that became a cause that we've done it every year since, with one blip during the pandemic, um, just to get people talking differently and
Yeah.
get people thinking differently about human resources. And oh, by the way, along the way, when I started connecting with people through Disrupt HR, a company that'd been here for 40 years at the time came along, and my recruiter connected me to an interview with them. And it was a manufacturing company that I actually was excited to get into tech and be in Silicon Slopes. But the lead took me to a manufacturing company again, with my background being from a manufacturing company. And the rest is history. I joined a company that has a lot of care. It's been around. It was one of the bigger companies in Utah. And I just realized I had an opportunity to join and build something for the next 45 years that, masters our startup phase and brings the best of that and to the future. And so, almost 7 years later, I've been with them, and we're now taking that care and building a company that's going to grow and grow into great things for the future of consumers with oral health. And we're now ranked in the top 100 companies that care by People magazine. We're ranked number 4 by Fortune magazine for large manufacturing nationally, and it's just an exciting place to be. And if you take me back 7 years ago, I was in a depression state. I'd never experienced great HR, but I desired to lead great HR, and it's been a journey. It's been a what next journey for me, where I
So
landed in a
cool.
place where I could create great HR with a great organization and a great CEO. So that's a long journey to get to where I'm at.
Well, that
So,
that was a great story. And I am wearing my Silicon Slopes Summit shirt today. I volunteered yesterday. And as I've learned, volunteering is such an amazing opportunity. When you go and you get involved in events, I remember when I met you through Disrupt HR, and what I love about what I'm hearing you say is the innovation piece in HR, because it's something that you can do. And I think your journey is very unique because you've gone through all these steps to get where you are, a lot of lessons along the way. um, it's awesome to hear introverts get into HR as well, because there is a place for introverted folks in HR, because someone like yourself who can speak the language of the CEO, talk about the financial piece and then tie that to the metrics, right? Is
mhm.
such an incredible thing, and it's so important to be able to do. And being in Silicon Slopes like we are, I think one of the things I've learned here in Utah, it's such an innovative place to live. And I love that we can think that way, because you're bringing us full circle to the point that, there are many roads into HR. I just happened to study it, at San Jose State
Mhm.
University. I was in Silicon Valley, grew up, born and raised there. Took the job with ADP several years ago. That brought me out to Utah, and then I saw how many folks here have a similar passion as the companies in Silicon Valley. So it's truly amazing. Utah is growing like wildfire out here. We're the tech scene, the economic scene. Our governor has done a really good job of the economics out here. So how did you get through? Let's talk about COVID real quick, because that was a unique situation for all of us and a unique time to lead. So as a leader, what did you face? How did you deal with it? What did you do that led you on your journey through that phase? Because that was such a hard time for many organizations to work through. It was kind of, there was no playbook really
Mhm.
for something so unprecedented. Can you talk about that a little bit? What'd you learn? What was the leadership journey there like for you when you went through that very human event of COVID.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it was unprecedented for everybody, and everybody had to write their own playbook. In our company, we're very fortunate that I can partner with an EHS team, an environmental security health organization, and we were able to partner together during that time between the human aspect and the safety aspect to find our journey together and
Hmm.
resource that journey together. And it was very exhausting for these organizations getting through that. But one thing that was unique about Ultradent, because it wasn't just the pandemic, it was the politics, it was George Floyd time period with
You're
racism
so
being a
right. Yeah.
spike.
All
uh,
those
you
different
just
things. Yeah.
you just
You're
had
totally
all
right
these
about that.
different things
It
that
was
came
all at
into
once
it.
too. It was like 2020 was an all-encompassing powder keg of craziness.
Yeah, it,
And
it just
you're
it
so right about that. I mean, it just the pendulum swing from the layoffs to hiring coming red hot and tight labor market. I mean, the we went from one extreme to the other too. All of that's very valid.
Yep. And for us, just before that, we'd started a leadership journey where we believe, and I believe in my HR strategy, it is all about leaders partnering with employees to succeed. And we have to develop those leaders, support the employees to partner with those leaders to be able to have great relationships that navigate all the complexities of business life and human interactions. And so we started a journey where we started training our leaders, training our culture on the X model of engagement. It's a model that's owned by GP Strategies that I'd used throughout my career, and I hang my HR strategies on, where essentially all it is it's a model that's an X, right? And so on
Mhm.
one side of the X, you have a company, an organization that's trying to deliver maximum results, either through their strategies, through their values, and through their financial results. And so they have a desire for maximum satisfaction or maximum contribution. And on the other X of the model, you have individuals that they want maximum satisfaction, goals that they want to achieve. They have things that they want. And those two entities intersect right in the middle of the X at what's called the job. And and so when you intersect those two things together, you have individuals that are being affected by society, being affected by their own goals that want satisfaction to do the job for the company. And you have a company that wants them to deliver maximum results. And the only way to navigate that to get to the apex between the two, and we call it the apex because when you find the perfect balance or the ideal balance in someone's career between them being satisfied for the work they're doing and them delivering maximum results, you find these people deliver unbelievable results that you wouldn't expect if you just gave them a paycheck and have them go without a partner. Because in that model, you have some people that deliver maximum results, but they're unhappy and they can't stay there because they're going to burn out. Or you have people that are satisfied, but they don't deliver maximum results and they're not going to stay there because everyone hates them because they're getting away with not doing anything or not delivering the results that are expected. And so we believe with that model that we need leaders, we need an organization that navigates constantly the conversation of, are you satisfied? How are you doing? What can I do to help you succeed? And are you delivering what we expect? And we have those conversations as we go through it. So if you take that training that we started right before the pandemic to build our leadership strategy around, we came into an environment where we got shut down. We had to figure out who stays to keep the operation alive in manufacturing lines. Corporate workers were required to go home at all costs to protect the lines, keep them open. And
Mhm.
it was a very difficult cultural environment. And so that X mentality, that apex mentality, we had to focus on how we maintain that apex between individuals and the company during a time where politics were dividing everybody to go different directions. And if you think about how that model works, for us, it drove everything. It drove everything in the conversation of vaccination versus not vaccination, mask versus not mask, the racism right and the woke left, whatever you want to call it. You have the two sides that were going polar opposite directions and forgetting that they all have valid concerns and
In the
agreement
middle.
where they can meet in the middle.
You're
And so
so
the
right.
X model
Yep.
is that middle in between. That with the way we approached it is we had to follow the government, the law, and we did that. And we helped employees understand we as an organization have to follow the laws. That's
Hmm.
our role, that's our responsibility. And in the middle of that, we need to listen to you. We're going to partner with you to find the right way through this together. And so that's how we navigated the politics of
The
the
time.
vaccination, the masks, is we just followed the law, and whether or not you disagree or agree with the law, that's the law. And that's our
That was
apex
the
in between all
basics.
of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
The other thing that happened during the pandemic with the George Floyd time period is when I arrived, I started talking about, hey, let's build up our inclusion strategy because we had an amazing culture that had a history with our founder doing inclusion, and we'd gotten a little bit away from that over time because we had enough care to maintain a great organizational culture.
Hmm.
But I just said, hey, do we have an inclusion strategy when I got there? And everyone in the leadership just felt, no, we got this down, we're good. And there's some bad connotations sometimes with diversity and inclusion strategies that they'd felt before with quotas and
Hmm.
requirements. And so
Hmm.
I sensed a little bit, okay, I need to step back and get to know the culture better. And then George Floyd hit, and the CEO came to me and said, I'm really worried about our culture being affected by this environment that's happening right now around us with racism and riots. And so you said something about inclusion strategy and diversity. What do we do? And so that led us to start
That's great that your
researching in
CEO
this.
recognized how important that was.
He did, and I think that's what happens in a lot of our HR strategies is sometimes our strategies aren't ready for the organization, and sometimes we need to wait for the powder cake to come to let the strategy take hold and succeed. And that one of the most beautiful experiences I've had in my career is to work with that CEO to develop a strategy for inclusion during a time of division in our country. And our marketing department worked with us. And we created a logo and a vision. It's called "You and I Together We Win," and we have a logo for that. We have
I
a
love
call
that.
to action where we seek out the excluded. We include and embrace everybody that we have differences with, and we
Hmm.
connect across our differences to succeed together. And it was really that X model that helped us realize, okay, what's the apex for the solution of inclusion? And it's winning together. If you and I can win together, we'll meet in the middle and find the solutions. And if we just add a little bit of seeking out the excluded, we'll find people that just want a chance in a world that doesn't want to give them a chance. And it's just evolved everything in our culture around staffing, around connection, around seeking out people. And it really helps us all over. And so for us, the pandemic, um, we actually succeeded. We had better talent strategies, and we came to a point where we have really learned a lot on how to navigate all of our challenges through finding the apex between the extremes around us, and we end up with a better place in our strategies going forward. And so for us, coming out of the strategy, we had our best sales year ever coming out of the second year of the
So awesome.
pandemic as everything came back online. And now we're finding ways to continue to grow and coming out of it. And our workforce stayed with us through that, and we're with it in a great way going forward.
Have you had some success in your inclusion strategy since then?
Yeah, yeah. I actually have given a talk on this. One of the principles of our inclusion strategy is to seek out the excluded, and
Hmm.
then we welcome and embrace all of our differences. I realized something about talent a long time ago for me, that I was around a lot of hiring of great people from great
Hmm.
backgrounds with great degrees. Um, but there was so much ego involved with people that had great backgrounds and great degrees. And so
So
a couple
true.
couple
Yes.
years ago, I read a study that talked about hiring stars, and it was a study that was used in the or the Harvard Business Review, where they just talked about in the banking industry how the banking industry would go out to magazines that listed all the best investment analysts,
Hmm.
and this was in the 80s and 90s, and they'd go out and hire the people that were ranked at the top from other companies. And
Mhm.
they just studied all these companies that would trade, or not trade, but just poach talent from each other because it was so transparent who the stars were. And at the end of this study, they found that everyone that was hired as a star to another company lost 20% of their performance in the new company. And they also found that they never got it back.
Mm.
And at the end of this study, what they found is the internal culture suffered from hiring stars because the people that wanted those jobs wanted to grow. We're looking at people coming in higher paid than them, and they resented that. And I think we
They
see
weren't
this in.
addressing the internal talent needs
They weren't.
um, first, which is a very important piece of the strategy, and we're bringing people from the outside, and so it diluted the
Yep.
morale. Yep,
Yeah, it's the growth of your
it's something
people.
that happens a lot.
Yep, the study just found that, like, it's the culture, it's the
That's really
development,
interesting.
and the stars were created, and they weren't stars alone. They were stars because of the culture and the development strategies of their organization. And so I've just researched that in my company and found that some of the best people that we have actually have this, what I call, an underdog story.
Mm,
Um, and for
that's awesome.
me,
I love
the
that.
thing that we have not tapped into enough in business is motivation.
Mm,
We think if we throw money at it, that's going to
yep.
motivate someone. But really, what our brains need is to be tapped into the chemicals that are going to stay long term, which, I've learned from a lot of science backgrounds that oxytocin and cortisol, or oxytocin and serotonin, are chemicals that really stick and
Hmm.
drive us with energy when they're tapped and triggered. And those are triggered by purpose, by contribution and adding value, and by collaborative relationships to succeed. That has a major impact on triggering those chemicals. Whereas usually we just give a paycheck to trigger the dopamines and the endorphins to just trigger, but those are short-term chemicals that go away. And
Hmm.
so when we hire, we're trying our best to hire people that have a story of humility, where
Hmm.
we give them a chance. Because when you hire someone that's being left out by another part of the industry,
Hmm.
it's amazing to see their motivation to just run through a wall for you. And if you just take
Wow.
that and invest in them to grow, they
Hmm.
go further. And some of our best leaders in our company have that story. And some of the
Hmm.
people that stay the least and the shortest are the ones that have the greatest backgrounds. And it's that balance of motivation that when we hire these underdogs, we find there's a lot of them out there. They're
Hmm.
being excluded by a system that is rewarding education, and schools that are saying, if you come here, you'll make this much on average when you leave.
Hmm.
And it just compounds a dynamic of hiring stars that
Hmm.
really aren't the stars of the long term. It's the ones that are motivated that succeed. And so it's just, I've learned a lot because of that. And I've learned a lot because of my journey being the one that was excluded
Hmm.
and it wasn't really looked at as a talent for a tech industry. And that really motivates me to show that in any industry, if you hire the right people, you can have the best people, the best culture, and have the best results as you move forward. You just got to find people that are motivated and keep their motivation through partnering with them.
I love that. So you bring a lot to the forefront, and the couple things that you. So it's very interesting. Just in about, I had never been to Minneapolis, Minnesota. Um, and I just spoke at SourceCon, which is a conference for recruiting folks about sourcing and talent. And
Hmm.
ironically, I set up my Airbnb. So I had a hotel up until the Friday, and then I needed to stay overnight for a couple nights. Well, I set my Airbnb just 2 blocks away from where the George Floyd scenario had taken place. And I walked down there and I just was blown away at the humanity of the whole thing. And there's, when you go there and you're in the area, there's a memorial of sorts, and they've set up flowers, and they have a whole display, and it's very, it's on the same level of humanity as the 9/11 memorial is in New York, in the
Hmm.
same general. I mean, you get that emotion when you go there, and it's so to hear you talk about this on a very human level, registers with me because I heard one of the most amazing talks from a diversity and equity and inclusion professional who that's all she does. Her name is Maisha Gray Diggs, and she's from Eventbrite. And her story is remarkable. Heard her at SourceCon. She's talking about, she has a neurodiverse son. Um, she's also was hit hard because she's African American. Just a really amazing human story. And that's what drives her in diversity and inclusion. And to hear that story and the human level of it really touched my heart. I just was blown away at that. That's one of the most amazing presentations ever given at that conference, in my opinion. Just so diversity and equity and inclusion also it brings me to belonging. I used to work for the church, obviously, right? And we had a term there that would always come up, and the term was belonging. And I think belonging is a perfect word. I mean, diversity, equity, and inclusion is very much the heart of it, but I think belonging is what we're shooting for. It's
Hmm.
because you want everybody in the workforce, regardless of background, to be successful, to have that opportunity. But what I love about what you're talking about is that you're going and looking for the underdog. I just watched American Underdog again. Um, and that story is about Kurt Warner, who nobody looked at him. He was one of these folks that everybody said, nope, he's a has been, he's not going to make it. And he had just this desire to go to the NFL and succeed. And he had to take a kind of an uncommon route to get to where he was. So
Hmm.
if you haven't watched that movie, it's pretty amazing because it
Yeah, I've
talks
seen it.
about
Yep.
it talks about some folks who are in that boat that you're talking about. And just his journey of going through arena football, which at the time was totally unprecedented, and then all the way of the Super Bowl and winning the Super Bowl. It's a story that I registered with because I think there's a lot of people who've been in that underdog scenario. He's working in a grocery store as a stock person, and then just the courage and the leadership that came with that. It all came about because of an uncommon route to that wasn't the normal route that that most of the A player NFL quarterbacks take. It was a roundabout way, but it just goes to show that as human beings we have so much power in what we do. And I think that's the heart of what we're talking about here. So I love hearing you talk about this because it's such an important thing to talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion in a way that's fair, but also not only that, it's a human element. There's
Hmm.
actually studies that have shown when you have a diverse workforce and it reflects the makeup of your customer base, that actually increases the revenue. So not only is it ethical and a good business choice to have an inclusion program and a focus on that and really helping hire diverse and underrepresented talent, it it's it has a direct impact to productivity, to the morale of your team, to even the outcomes of your sales success. It's just a
Yep.
remarkable segue to that. And being able to take that data, my whole presentation in SourceCon recently was about focusing on the data and being able to tell the story of what had happened these last 3 years from COVID all the way up until now, the emergence of remote work, why that's still important, just the makeup of your workforce, just all these different issues that came about, and even diversity and inclusion and artificial intelligence as well. I mean, artificial intelligence is a big one. That was a big topic yesterday at Silicon Slopes.
Hmm.
um, can I ask your opinion on that? What do you think about artificial intelligence and its effect on talent, and where do you see that going? Is your opinion on that front? It's an
Yeah,
interesting topic.
to me, it's really, I think too often the workforce in general gets this fear of the change rather than seeing the opportunity that's coming with the change. And so to me,
It's a good way
AI,
of putting it.
chat
Yep.
GBT, we're looking at it right now in our workforce and seeing with Microsoft, they purchased ChatGPT and they're integrating it into their
That's right.
systems,
Hmm.
and they're calling it Copilot.
Hmm.
And I think that is the perfect term for what it needs to be. Is the way the AI works and what ChatGPT is doing is it's simply an amazing predictive tool that's
Hmm.
scraping the internet for the information and just predicting after each word what's the right next word. And it does obviously an extraordinarily amazing job that baffles all of us on how you can have a conversation, have it come back to you so quickly and have this information. But
Hmm.
the problem that everybody needs to understand is it needs an expert. It needs an innovation mind behind it to partner with it to make it better and better. And in turn, it makes us better because it quickens our ability to find information. It quickens our ability to gather that information, organize it, and put it into a place where we can talk about it. But it needs to have us take that information to make us quicker and just free us up to innovate and find new ideas. And so if we truly think
True.
about
Yeah.
what this is going to bring to us, is those that embrace it and accept it as a partner to us and not an enemy to us will actually grow and maximize their abilities because it's going to free them up for time not to study everything out. Just go and ask the question and
Yep.
get the answer so you can figure out what the next idea is. And that's
Hmm.
where innovation is going to thrive in the companies that embrace it and the employees that embrace it. And, will it change jobs and will it transform companies with the resources they need? Yeah, it will. But I think the companies that are smart about it aren't going to look at it as just a headcount reduction opportunity. They're actually going to find maybe
Great way putting
maybe
that.
if it's going
Yeah.
to maximize the talent we have and allow us not to have to grow headcount exponentially overnight versus let's just make everybody better in our workforce right now.
Hmm.
And so that's kind of my thought. I'm not a technologist by nature. I
It's
just
okay.
am
Yeah.
fascinated by it and I can
I'm
talk
there
to
with you.
people and
Yeah.
talk to people about it, but I'm not an expert on it. So with every change I've seen throughout my career, I've never been the smartest person in the room. I've always had ADHD that's kind of held me back in my life because I didn't know I had it until I was in my 40s. But I will say the thing that I've realized is if I can just wade through changes with a positive attitude, a curiosity to understand it better, I've always come out with another side growing into the future.
Hmm.
Whereas human nature tends to want to resist it in a lot of cases and get insecure by what they don't know, and we fight against it. Whereas if we can just overcome that human tendency to fight against what's changing and accept that change is just a part of life, having a growth mindset, um, I think we're going to find with AI, it is going to transform all of us if we let it. And that's the way we have to look at it. So I also want to go back to what you were talking about before with
Sure. Please.
the talent, the diversity, and the importance of it. I just what we've found, and I've experienced bad things and good things with diversity strategies.
Hmm.
And I truly believe what has to happen is you have to have a culture that's ready to accept and help people belong. Because I've been in situations where, as recruiters, we have the tendency that, hey, we need to hire diversity to help those numbers grow. Because it's just so true. When you
The
have
wrong way to
diverse
look at it.
Yeah, if you have a diverse
You
perspective at
can't
all
look at the
levels in your organization,
exactly. Yep.
you will connect to a global audience better.
Right.
But if you
They can't
can't,
feel like a number. They cannot feel like a number.
yep, they,
That is what you're talking about. It's where the focus has been in that sense.
yeah. So if you're able to build a culture that receives people, embraces people, and helps them succeed, ironically, there's not enough companies doing that. And what we're finding at Ultradent is those people will seek you out. The
Hmm.
diversity will seek you out if there's a culture that will help them succeed. And so if we can truly understand how to build cultures, then the diversity will be so much easier. Whereas a lot of times we're fighting ourselves because we're not an inclusive mindset. We don't understand our biases, and we don't have a culture that can work through that with everybody that comes into it. So
Yeah, and
anyway,
everybody has some kind of unconscious bias to some degree. And I think the key is fighting through that. And I hear you. I think you're talking on a lot of levels about the human element of it. And I think that's the most important way we need to look at it is, yeah, we need the data to back it up and plead our case, but it's also a very human and ethical issue. I mean, we need to make sure we're doing it for the right reasons and not just to
yeah,
fill a quota. I think that, when you talk about filling a quota, you're really kind of diluting the purpose of why you're doing it. And you have to really believe that it's a human issue. I mean, that's what I hear you saying, and I agree with you wholeheartedly on that. But yeah, I've really enjoyed this conversation. I think there's been a lot of learning from it. You've What I love about you, and just take this to heart, you're very humble, and I love listening to your story. I love where you've been in your journey. You bring a lot of learning to the table that's very practical from a career standpoint. Um, I think the assertiveness in our careers is so important. Being able to, if you have an idea in your life and in your career to bring to the table to your leadership, I think it's so important, whatever your background is, to not be afraid to bring that forward. I
hmm,
think some of the best leaders I've ever had were the ones that wanted to hear what I had to say, and they listened and let me state my ideas, but they also balanced that with the real needs of the business. And so, but the encouragement of top leadership to talk about that was so key. Um,
yeah, yep.
it's such an important piece of the puzzle. Is there anything else you want to pass along? Any other thoughts today? This has been a fun conversation. We need to let you get to your day, but we're getting to the end of the normal time that I would allot for this. But I just wanted to say thank you. Is there anything else you'd like to share today?
I guess just thinking about, you know, what you're trying to do with the concept of what's next. I really think it's something we all need to take to heart. Is um, you can't operate in a mindset that there's nothing next. There's always something coming. There's always a change coming down the pipeline. And if we have a mindset of what's next, and we're okay that we may not know what's next, it's amazing what happens when we're willing to adapt to change and accept that it's a part of our lives. And even the stresses in our lives that we all have, if we accept that stress is actually an experience that will make us stronger, it's interesting what happens when that happens. So I love what you're trying to do with, talking about what's next, because it's so important for us to not stay comfortable in our comfort zones. We have to just be ready that something's going to change. We just have to be prepared for it. So it's been great to talk to you, Mike. I appreciate the time.
Yeah, absolutely. What a wonderful conversation. And David, you are very humble. I really appreciate that about the style of leadership that you have. The ability to listen and the ability, I mean, all the stuff you're talking about is so key. It's been such a great conversation today. I learned a lot from you. So thanks for coming on, and it's been a pleasure.
Okay,
And
thank you.
that's it. Mike
Thank you,
out.
Mike. We'll see you.